Imagine you're a shepherd in first century Israel. Night has fallen. You've gathered your sheep into a walled enclosure. It's called a sheepfold. There's only one way in, one way out. And as a shepherd, you just don't guard that door, you become the door. You lay down there at the opening so nothing can get in or out, unless it went through you. That's the image Jesus uses when he makes his third I am statement, I am the door. Not a door, but the door. One way in, one way to safety, one way to salvation. Today we're diving into one of the most comforting claims Jesus has ever made. Jesus calls himself the door of the sheep. Jesus just claimed to be the light of the world, and the light refers to the coming Messiah. And Jesus was claiming to have the Shekinah glory that only God has. Jesus was clearly claiming to be God, and the religious rulers understood this because they tried to stone him there at the end of chapter 8. Jesus hid himself, went out of the temple, passed by a man who was born blind at birth. That's in chapter 9. Jesus spit on the ground, made clay, applied the clay to the man's eyes, and Jesus told him to wash in the pool of Siloam. The pool of Siloam was a gathering place, and Jesus is making really a circle here, showing that in the midst of these people, God's presence is here. This is seen when the priests draw water from that pool. They would pour it over the altar, really just representing the outpouring of God's Spirit. And through Jesus' claims of deity and how the blind man's sight was returned by the washing of that pool, again showing really that God is there with him. So we'll watch what happens next. It's really a powerful contrast. The religious rulers were blind, just like the blind man, but they were unwilling to see the truth that was really clearly standing in front of them. Whereas the blind man received physical sight and even spiritual sight by recognizing that Jesus was God. The religious rulers continually questioned the blind man, and they end up throwing him out of the synagogue because he was claiming to be Jesus' disciples. So we'll look at John chapter 9, verse 35 to 41. This is setting up, really affirming Jesus' deity before he makes his third I am statement. Jesus heard that they had put him out of the synagogue. He said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered, "Who is he?" "Lord, that I may believe in him." Jesus said to him, "You have both seen him, and he is the one who is talking to you." And he said, "Lord, I believe." And he worshiped him. And Jesus said, "For judgment I came into the world, so that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind." Those of the Pharisees who were with him heard these things and said to him, "We are not blind too, are we?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no sin. But since you say we see, your sin remains." So we have Jesus reaffirming his deity. The blind man recognizes that Jesus was God, and we know that because he worshiped him. This sets the stage perfectly for what Jesus is about to say. So Jesus sets the stage to show that there is only one way to have access to God, and that is through him. Jesus claims to be the door. And, doors have two primary purposes: to let people in or out, and to keep people or even unwanted things out. So this is the third I am statement, and like the others, Jesus sets up a lot of contrast. And here with the third I am statement, I am the door. It contrasts light and darkness, a true shepherd versus a false shepherd. And it builds up for his next I am statement, the fourth one, that he is the good shepherd. And, properly entering through the door, is the proper way. So let's read John 10, verses 1 through 3. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter by the door into the fold of the sheep, but climbs up another way, he is a thief and a robber. He who enters by the door is a shepherd of the sheep. To him the doorkeeper opens, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calls to his own sheep by name and leads them out. So we have a door there, and he's calling himself the door. So he's a literal door. And where it's talking about the fold of the sheep. A sheepfold is a walled enclosure with only one entrance. This is where the sheep are put at night for protection. Think of maybe a courtyard. And then he gives the contrast, the difference between a thief and a robber. A thief, someone who maybe steals or embezzles, but he does it secretly and craftily. Those who come before him, as rulers and leaders, he's calling them thieves. The Herodians, Pharisees, they have selfish motives. A robber would be, say, a highway bandit. A thief steals by stealth. A robber steals by violent assault. So he's saying there's two different groups here that are attacking the sheep. So what does the sheepfold represent? And, this is important. It is Judaism. At that time, some of God's people were found within this religious system, and Jesus is setting up a contrast: the true shepherd versus the false shepherds, Christ versus the Pharisees. Then, when Jesus walks about the people, climbing up some other way, he's talking about the wrong way to enter. But Jesus entered the right way. He was born under the law, fulfilled every requirement. He did everything God asked of him. And now he's leading his sheep out of the religious system, out of legalism, into a relationship with the Father. And then, there at verse 2, but he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. So what does that mean? It means Christ presented himself to Israel in the proper manner, in the lawful manner, in a strict accordance with the Holy Scriptures. He submitted to every condition God established. He answered to everything written about the Messiah. So think about it. He was born a virgin, born to the covenant people, from a Judaic stock, the line of Judah, born in Bethlehem, the royal city. He was born under the law, Galatians 4:4, circumcised on the 8th day, presented in the temple when his mother was purified. Jesus conformed to everything God required of an Israelite. He took the path of God's will, and he entered by the door, the lawful way. And we see in Matthew 5, verses 17 and 18, do not think that I came to abolish the law or the prophets. I did not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not the smallest letter or stroke shall pass from the law until it is all accomplished. So, here in verse 3, it mentions the doorkeeper. It's the one who guards the entrance. The shepherd would lay down at the entrance of the sheepfold, and he became the door. And so the one who has the right or authority to come in would be allowed, because he would have to step over the shepherd, over the door. And, it was not uncommon for many shepherds to share a sheepfold, and by doing this, their sheep would get intermingled, mixed up. And in the morning, the shepherd would walk through the only door of the sheepfold, and he would call his sheep. And sheep know their master's voice, and they will only follow him. He calls his own sheep by name, so it's showing relationship, time spent together, trust, and he leads them out, brings them out. So let's look at verses 4 and 5. When he puts forth all of his own, he goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. A stranger they simply will not follow, but will flee from him, because they do not know the voice of strangers. So when Jesus puts forth, where it says there, he moves the sheep, and this is a nonviolent walking ahead of them, rather than, say, driving cattle where you're pushing from behind. So he goes before him. He calls his sheep by his own. He calls them his own, and the sheep follow him because they know him. And, time has been spent together with them. And, ancient shepherds, they had a personal devotion to their sheep. They would walk with them, talk with them, sing to them. Some would even play a repeated tune on a flute. So let's look at verses 6 and 7. This figure of speech, Jesus spoke to them, but they did not understand what those things were which he had been saying to them. So Jesus said to them again, "Truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep." So God is calling, and their proper response to his call is for them to follow him. And now Jesus makes it clear he's not speaking in parables anymore. Jesus claims to be God, and he does this by declaring himself to be the door. The sheep have to go through him to be saved. And this is really just a buildup for the next I am statement, where he calls himself the Good Shepherd, who enters through the door and calls his sheep by name. So this is, to lead the people out of Judaism. And it really allows us to have a relationship with the Father. Let's read verses 8 through 10. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. If anyone enters through me, he will be saved, and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and to kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. So those who came before him, which would be the other religious rulers, and he's calling them thieves and robbers. So if you enter God's way through the door, through Jesus Christ, you'll be saved and attain eternal life. False prophets, false religions, they're thieves and robbers. Thieves come to destroy, to cause the destruction of something or someone. Jesus came that they might have life and have life more abundantly. This is an extraordinary amount, to have it full. It's an overflowing quality of eternal life and even life here on earth. And it's what Jesus came to give. Think of a door at your house. It's no good unless you go through it. It's the same with Jesus. As he calls himself the door, you must go through him. And, this truth is no good unless we go through it and, receive this abundant life through Jesus Christ. So are you trying to enter in the wrong way? Our culture says there are many paths to God, multiple doors. Take your pick. They all lead the same direction. But Jesus says, I am the door, not a door, but the door. This isn't being narrow-minded. It's really a rescue for us. You can't climb over the wall. You can't sneak in through the back. There's only one way to have access to God, and that's through Jesus Christ. And, here's the promise. If you enter through him, you will be saved. You'll go in and out and find pasture. You'll have life, not just existence, but abundant life, overflowing life, life to the fullest. The thieves come to steal, kill, and destroy. But Jesus came to give you life. So the question isn't whether you like what Jesus is saying here. The question is, are you going to enter through the door? Are you going to enter his way? Jesus is the only way to have access to God the Father. Thanks for watching.